Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivragacharya Stotra Satasi Srimad Abhai Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Kuti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Shri Mayapur Dham ki Yanitai Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Agyana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurum Militanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayan Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakam Vitamscha E Krishna Karuna Sindho Dīnabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Ancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaevacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 27, entitled Understanding Material Nature. Text 22. Jñānena dṛṣṭa-tattvena Jñānena dṛṣṭa-tattvena vairāgyeṇa balīyasā vairāgyeṇa balīyasā tapo-yuktena Yogena tapo-yuktena Yogena tīvreṇātma-samādhinā tīvreṇātma-samādhinā jñānena dṛṣṭa-tattvena vairāgyeṇa balīyasā tapo-yuktena Yogena tīvreṇātma-samādhinā. Bolo. jñānena dṛṣṭa-tattvena vairāgyeṇa balīyasā tapo-yuktena Yogena jñānena dṛṣṭa-tattvena vairāgyeṇa balīyasā tapo-yuktena Yogena tīvreṇātma-samādhinā vairāgyeṇa balīyasā Yogena tīvreṇātma-samādhinā. Ladies. jñānena dṛṣṭa-tattvena vairāgyeṇa balīyasā tapo-yuktena Yogena tīvreṇātma-samādhinā jñānena dṛṣṭa-tattvena vairāgyeṇa balīyasā tapo-yuktena Yogena tīvreṇātma-samādhinā jñānena in knowledge, dṛṣṭa-tattvena with vision of the absolute truth, vairāgyeṇa with renunciation, balīyasā very strong, tapo-yuktena by engagement in austerity, Yogena by mystic yoga, tīvreṇa firmly fixed, ātma-samādhinā by self-absorption. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This devotional service has to be performed strongly in perfect knowledge and with transcendental vision. One must be strongly renounced and must engage in austerity and perform mystic yoga in order to be firmly fixed in self-absorption. Purport. Devotional service in Krishna consciousness cannot be performed blindly due to material emotion or mental concoction. It is specifically mentioned here that one has to perform devotional service in full knowledge by visualizing the absolute truth. We can understand about the absolute truth by evolving transcendental knowledge, and the result of such transcendental knowledge will be manifested by renunciation. That renunciation is not temporary or artificial, but is very strong. It is said that development of Krishna consciousness is exhibited by proportionate material detachment or vairāgya. If one does not separate himself from material enjoyment, it is to be understood that he is not advancing in Krishna consciousness. Renunciation in Krishna consciousness is so strong that it cannot be deviated by any attractive illusion. One has to perform devotional service in full tapasya, austerity. One should fast on the 2 Ekādaśī days, which fall on the 11th day of the waxing and waning moon, and on the birthdays of Lord Kṛṣṇa, Lord Rāma and Caitanya Mahāprabhu. There are many such fasting days. Yogena means by controlling the senses and mind. Yoga indriya-saṁyamaḥ. Yogena implies that one is seriously absorbed in the self and is able, by development of knowledge, to understand his constitutional position in relationship with the super self. In this way, one becomes fixed in devotional service, and his faith cannot be shaken by any material allurement. Hare Krishna. So this verse and the previous verse are intimately connected, and we are understanding that this all comes in an answer to Devahuti's question. Devahuti's question was, how can the soul, which is entangled with Prakriti, be liberated? Actually, this verse, in many ways, kind of integrates the teachings of Lord Kapila, which began in chapter 25. Devahuti had asked many questions about material nature, about the self, about liberation, and Lord Kapila began explaining about the glories of devotional service, explaining the superiority of bhakti. And there we heard about sadhu sangha, about the qualities of a devotee, about hearing and the association of devotees. Chapter 26 was more focused on understanding material nature, Prakriti, how we are entangled in material nature. And this chapter 27 focuses more on liberation. The first part of the chapter is talking about jnana, discovering again a lot of things about jnana. But now in the previous verse and in this verse, Kapila Muni is giving the answer. How is the soul going to be liberated, become free from the entanglement with jnana, with material nature? So anyone remembers what was the instruction from the previous verse? Very important instruction. Hearing intensively for a long time. That's the means for liberation. And very important instruction. And it says in the previous verse, the word tīvra is also utilized. tīvreṇā majibhaktya cha shruta samvrittaya chiram. It says, by hearing for a long time about me or from me. And now in this verse, it's giving us actually, in one sense, like a description of what are the qualities of the characteristics of someone who is actually hearing. Not only the qualities and the characteristics of someone who is hearing, but the qualities and the characteristics that facilitate that we engage in this tīvra bhakti. Tīvra bhakti is forceful, is strong. We heard about this tīvreṇā bhakti Yogena in second canto of the Bhagavatam. And I believe Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that this Tīvra Bhakti is so strong, it's like the currents of the Ganges at the top, that is flowing so strong that it removes all dirty things from the heart. Everything gets kicked out. And this is the kind of effort, the kind of bhakti that is required for us to get out of the material world. Because we know how difficult it is. The material, we are deeply engrossed. So earlier in this chapter also was mentioned, what is the problem? The problem is that we are identifying with material nature. Vyasadeva, in his meditation at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, he already established that. The problem is the soul, even though the soul is separate in one sense from material nature, is unaffected by material nature, but the problem is the identification with material nature. And the example is given earlier in this chapter also, like the sun is reflected on the water. The sun is not affected by the reflection, but because we identify deeply with the reflection, then we suffer and we become more and more entangled. And what is the result of that entanglement? The fever of material existence rises. And what is it? I am the controller, I am the proprietor, I am the enjoyer. So now the question is, how are we going to become free from this? And this is what is being given here. And the first thing he says is that he's giving a sequence. It's very wonderful verse actually. It's like jñānena, knowledge, dṛṣṭa-tattvena. First of all, knowledge, we have knowledge, but knowledge in itself is not sufficient. We have to actually be able to see through the eyes of that knowledge. Sastra Shakshus. One thing is to have knowledge, theoretical knowledge, and the other thing is to be able to see through the eyes of that knowledge, to live according to those principles. Is vijñāna, is realization. Like so many of us know that there are things that we should not do, right? But still we do. In the material world, we have people who have addictions. They know how bad it is, but they cannot give it out. They have the knowledge, but they don't have the dṛṣṭa-tattvena. They don't have the vision. And this is, for me, the most important, what struck me the highest when I was studying this verse. How are we going to get this dṛṣṭa-tattva? How are we going to be able to see things properly? We have been studying the scriptures for so many years. We have been practicing Krishna consciousness. Still, we struggle with certain things. Why? The vision, we still don't have the realization. And how that realization comes is given to us. Krishna has to give that realization. But for him to give that realization, there has to be some effort. And the effort is what is being described here. So I don't want us to think, while we're reading this verse, that sadhana bhakti, or the process of obtaining that realization, is mechanical. Because it's not mechanical. It's depending on Krishna's mercy. And we should have that very clear in our understanding. And that's why the devotee is always humble, always seeking blessings. Because it's not depending on my own effort. It's depending on the blessings of the Vaishnavas, and it's depending on the blessings of Krishna. However, effort is required. When we're making the effort, we're showing Krishna that we really sincerely want this mercy, that we really need his mercy. So here, as I said, so jñānena dṛṣṭa-tattvena. Now, the person who has heard the knowledge, he sees through the eyes of that knowledge. And there are many results of that. And the immediate result is vairāgya. One becomes detached from material nature. One now sees his perspective on life changes. You know, once we actually have seen the truth of material nature, when we have actually seen the tricks of material nature, we're no longer attracted, you know. My daughter yesterday wanted to watch some magic tricks, you know, on things. So I showed her some, you know, the YouTube thing. You have to do your duties with the children also. And I showed her some magic tricks, you know. And what happens when you see the magic tricks? The magic trick is no longer interesting, right? Because you know what's happening, you know. So with Maya, it's also a little bit like this. We see, once we see actually how Maya is tricking us, how Maya, you know, how Maya is placing a bait in front of us, we're no longer interested in the bait. We no longer bite the bait. Because we know what comes after is what? Trap. We suffer. So this is the result, that we see that actually, first is jnana, I am the soul, I am the eternal servant of Krishna, I am an eternal spirit soul, I have an eternal relationship with Krishna, in which Krishna reciprocates with me in ways that are actually even beyond anything I've experienced in my life before. And I really want that. Now I have given the knowledge, but now I begin to see through the eyes of that. So now, how my life will change if I live my life with the understanding that I am the eternal servant of Krishna. Not just theoretically. We heard this so many times. But actually, I live according to that principle. This is something that we need to contemplate. How do I interact with matter on that basis? It's going to change. Because I'm going to move from being the enjoyer or being trying to exploit the resources of material nature for actually seeing how I can utilize material nature in the service of the Lord. And that implies that my material situation, my material circumstance is also helping me how to serve Krishna. We become frustrated with our material situation. We complain, we resist it. Why is it like this? Why is that like that? But actually, if I'm actually a devotee, and I understand that no blade of grass moves without the sanction of the Lord, then whatever is happening in my life is Krishna's arrangement for my upliftment. And I can utilize that situation. How can I serve in this situation? This is a constant thing during the Bhagavatam. So many tragedies, so many challenges. How do the devotees respond? They respond with surrender. They respond with Krishna consciousness. How can I serve in this situation? So this is dṛṣṭa-tattvena. And it means, brings about vairāgya. I am no longer the enjoyer. I am no longer the controller. I am no longer the proprietor of the exploiter of this situation. But I am the servant. So I'm not trying to exploit. So then, this vairāgya, and it's described, this vairāgyeṇa balīyasā, is a very strong type of vairāgya. Why? Because, as I said, you no longer have any interest. So far we covered quite a few points from the purport, and practically in this purport, every sentence is like like an instruction that we can learn. Just the first sentence of the purport. Devotional service in Krishna consciousness cannot be performed blindly due to material emotion or mental concoction. What does it mean to perform it blindly or by emotion? This is, even if we look at, not just within Krishna consciousness, but religious practitioners around the world. A lot of it is practiced out of sentiment, right? It's practiced out of sentiment, but there is no knowledge behind it. There is no tattva dṛṣṭa. There is no vairāgya. We see so many people, I remember I used to do Sankirtan in the West, and I was doing, on Fridays, it was late in the evening, people will come out of the church. Tons of people coming out of the church. Where did they go after the church? To the pub. Straight into the pub, I remember I used to chant my Gayatri in the churches in England while I was doing Sankirtan. And I remember seeing pictures of events they have. The priest was serving the beer for the people. So how is that changing your life? How is your practice? We don't measure our success in Krishna consciousness by my emotion only. Of course, the emotion counts, how much I am developing love for God. But here is being given, what is the criteria? And the criteria is that we are developing a different perspective on life. I was just in Spain, and my family, they are all Christians, anyway, I could say so many things, but one thing is my father is probably going to leave his body soon. He's 92. I was taking care of him. And I asked him, what did they tell you in the church about death? He's also a catechist, so it's not only like he just goes to the church, he also teaches to the children about how to do the Holy Communion and this. And they said to me, they don't speak about death. They don't speak about death. He said, mostly it's like, just before you're going to die, they come and they do this ceremony. I don't know how it's called in English, but it's unción de enfermos. I don't know. It's like a thing, And I said, well, now it's time to really, in our practices of Krishna consciousness, preparation for death comes from the moment you're born. Even before you're born, you're already making preparations. Like we do all these samskaras before even the boy is born. And the whole life is a preparation for death. Why? Because we have knowledge. And what is the knowledge? We're the soul, entrapped in material nature. So therefore the purpose is to get out of material nature. But that knowledge is not even at the time of death. They don't have understanding. And because of that, we have so many people in the world who are practicing some religious practice. But what is the result? People are still engaging in sinful activities. Because it's no jnana, and there is no tattva dṛṣṭa, and there is no vairāgya. And the same applies to us. We may be practicing Krishna consciousness, but how my life has changed. How my life has changed. Or how my life is changing. Prabhupada says, okay, more. It is specifically mentioned here that one has to perform the devotional service in full knowledge by visualizing the absolute truth. So therefore the importance of hearing about Krishna. Rupa Goswami explains that the adhikar to advance in Krishna consciousness is knowledge, faith and knowledge. And then he says that it is said that development of Krishna consciousness is exhibited by proportionate material detachment or vairāgya. Now we may hear this and we may become a little negative. Oh, still so attached after all these things. So, when we hear these verses, also we should understand that we are becoming detached. Even after a short practice, the fact that we're following the 4 regulative principles, that we gave up so many bad habits, is amazing, Just after a short practice of Krishna consciousness, we see a big transformation. But there are certain things that take a little longer, is it not? Certain things that go along with us for longer time. And then, what do we do about that? We beg for Krishna's mercy. He is the one who is going to free us from that. We're making the big effort. We are trying to do everything that we can. But actually, the fact is that only when He decides, He will free us from those tendencies. And in order to do that, we have to go down to our knees. Going down to our knees means this serious practice, this strong endeavor in our Krishna consciousness. So, and then we see that the actual person who is really advanced in Krishna consciousness, actually the devotee, he's never deviated. That's what Prabhupada is saying. Renunciation in Krishna consciousness is so strong that it cannot be deviated by any attractive illusion. And we have many examples. In the Bhagavatam, we have Parikshit Maharaj. We have the example of Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur, he was tempted by Maya Devi herself. He was not deviated. Because he was very strong in his Krishna consciousness. We have Prahlad Maharaj, very heavy tests, they were not deviated. So, as I was saying, for me, one important lesson from this is that we can aspire for this vision who is going to prevent us from being deviated. Mercy, for many people, what mercy means. As I said, so many religious practitioners, what are they asking for? You can also measure the consciousness. And I'm not being condescending here. I'm including myself in those people also. I'm preaching to myself. But we are hearing the instructions from the Bhagavatam, which is bringing light into our consciousness. What actually we should aspire for. It's not that we ask Krishna to fulfill our desires. Our real aspiration is that my faith, my devotion becomes undeviated. Just like Queen Kunti is praying for the same thing, no? Just like the water of the Ganges flows to the Ganges uninterrupted. Let my devotion to you flow also uninterrupted. So this is the deep aspiration, and we know that we are being blessed by Krishna when we are making advancement with this, when my knowledge is increasing, when my detachment is increasing, when my vision, I'm seeing things in proper perspective. And then what it follows is tapo-yuktena. They say one has to perform devotional service in full tapasya, austerity. So what tapasya means? Tapasya means that we're giving up something lower for attaining something higher. We're making we're giving up the immediate pleasure that comes from something. Like yesterday, it was Ekādaśī. So we perform some fasting. Some of us may do nirjal, some of them may do jal Ekādaśī, some of them may eat once a day or chant extra rounds. Why we do this? Because we know that actually I'm going to get something much better if I do this. I am, but also the main point is that we're showing Krishna that actually I really want you. I'm prepared to give up these things for you. The material conditioned soul is trying to exploit, trying to enjoy. This idea of tapasya is kind of almost, why would you do that? Why would you stop enjoying? But we're showing Krishna, I'm not interested in the enjoyment part. I'm interested in you. I really want, please help me. So Prabhupada is explaining here that we perform tapasya by, fasting. But following the regulative principle is tapasya. Getting up in the morning. Chanting our rounds early in the morning. Sometimes being nice to devotees who are not nice to us. That's a tapasya also. someone is not behaving properly towards you, and you respond with humility and with respect, that's also why we're showing Krishna, I'm serious. I'm not going to let this stay in the way of your mercy. And again, when we say I'm not going to let anything stay in the way of my devotional service, we should also not let any negativity stay in the way of my bhakti. It means that when we're trying to do these things, we may fail. We may not be able to perform this tīvra bhakti initially, but we keep trying. And we not let the things that we are not able to do at this moment be in the way. Okay, I may have this difficulty. It's okay. Krishna will help me. In due course, Krishna will remove these things. Meanwhile, I am doing the best I can. I do Bhakti Shastri courses, and many times the devotees express their challenges. I cannot chant my rounds. I have this difficulty. I cannot get up in the morning. I cannot do this. I cannot do that. So do what you can at this moment. Just do what you can. And if you cannot chant 16, okay, chant less, but try to chant good quality rounds and pray for mercy and build up. Seek good association. But if you become your worst critic, your worst enemy, then you find another battle on top of it. Like we become like these people who I don't know the word in English, they do self-harm. Okay, this is where I am at the moment. This is my starting point. Like if I want to go from here to Kolkata, I have to get a taxi, or I have to go to Navadvip or to Krishna Nagar, get a train. I have to start from where I am at. If I am in Spain and I want to go to Calcutta, much longer. Or if I am in the US, even longer. But I can only start from the point I am at the moment. So similarly, in Krishna consciousness is like this. You cannot pretend. This vairāgya, this vairāgyeṇa balīyasā. Prabhupada is emphasizing in the purport. He's saying that this renunciation. That renunciation is not temporary or artificial. So balīyasā means not only that it's strong, but it means that it's not artificial. What means artificial? Artificial means that we repress, that we force, that we pretend that it's not there. Certain things, but balīyasā means that vairāgya, strong renunciation, means that we see things now from a different perspective. I see how this is an obstacle in my Krishna consciousness, and I prefer to give it up. What is that verse? Raso varjan rasopyasa param dṛṣṭa nivartate. Same word, param dṛṣṭa. dṛṣṭa-tattvena. It's a superior vision. This higher taste means that now our eyes have been opened, and we see what is what is actually my real self-interest, and I act according to that. Therefore, it's not that I am, giving something up, but internally I'm still thinking, I want it. I really want to enjoy this. I really want to enjoy this. That creates a tension, and eventually what happens is that if we don't develop the actual vision, actually it can become a disaster, actually. So it's about developing this vision, seeing how, if I don't get up in the morning, what happens if I don't get up in the morning? I don't chant good rounds. The whole day I'm struggling to catch up with my rounds. My whole sadhana is affected. So therefore, I want to get up in the morning. I want to have good japa. If I don't control my tongue, Then what happens? I become overweight. My mind is disturbed. I cannot focus. And this leads us to the next point. Because tapo-yuktena, Yogena. Next point that Prabhupada mentioned here is about controlling the mind and senses. Controlling the mind and senses, it also comes by realization. The process being described here is bhakti yoga. It's not artificial renunciation. We are actually, as I said, cultivating a higher understanding, a higher taste. So therefore, I want to do this. I know, and this is something that is often not so much emphasized, but I noticed that if I just make that simple effort to really control the tongue of eating, wow, you become like a different person. What means that? Okay, stop, like sugar, less sugar, less flour, all those things that are actually bad for your health. Yeah? Not eating, constantly throughout the day, having breaks to eat. This will make the mind more peaceful, and we see that actually this is what the Goswamis did. What did the Goswamis do? They were eating very little. I remember one devotee, he asked one time, Advaita Swami, he said, how can I maintain my brahmacharya? And you know what the Advaita Swami said to him? And Advaita Swami is famous for his self-control, right? He's a very rigid sannyasi. And he said, eat less. So Yogena, how am I controlling my mind and senses? How am I controlling what I watch, what I hear, what I eat? This is all things that we know, because I become what I consume. He says, like we become what we eat. It's not only we become what we eat, it's we become what we hear. We hear criticism. We hear politics. The mind becomes agitated. The mind becomes polarized. This is a very common symptom of Kali Yuga. Everything is so polarized. And what happens with the mind is polarized. It's very difficult to focus, which is the next point. tīvreṇātma-samādhinā. How everything concludes, that's how I was saying, the whole teaching is being given in the verse, step by step. What is the final point? One becomes firmly fixed. Another word that is used in the Bhagavatam is that one becomes loyal, sati. The word is used, satim. That when one hears the truth and one applies the truth, one becomes fixed. So sometimes we may ask, what means to be fixed in Krishna consciousness? This verse answers that question. This is what means to be fixed. Having knowledge, acting according to that knowledge, becoming detached, performing tapasya in Krishna consciousness, controlling the mind and senses, and then tīvreṇātma-samādhinā. Then what is the result? Then we can actually become absorbed in the self and absorbed in Krishna. All this becomes like the foundation, the platform where we can actually practice Krishna consciousness, tīvra bhakti, without interruption, without distraction. So tīvreṇātma-samādhinā. So in this way, this verse take us through the journey, of how to become free from the entanglement of material existence. So as I said, just to recap, the previous verse was explaining to us that we have to hear intensively for a long time. And here you could say that these two verses, they work both ways. If we hear intensively, the result would be what is being described in the first 22. And in this verse 22, if we apply, if we live according to these principles, we will be able to hear for a long time attentively. Hare Krishna. So thank you very much for your kind attention. Any questions or comments? Yes, Prabhu.
One slogan I hear from Prabhupada, he said, act now or samadhi later. So what is the meaning of this?
First deserve, then desire. No? Is what it says. Yeah, because it's again the point I was making that, certain things in our hearts, the anarthas that we have in our hearts, are impeding us from having that samadhi, that constant meditation. Sometimes we may be thinking, well, I've been chanting 30 plus years, I've been, doing devotional service, and still, where is the prema? Where is the prema? It's not coming, no? But the point I was making at the beginning is that this prema, this samadhi, is given to us. Is given to us. We cannot, this is where the meaning of causeless mercy in one sense is that you can try your best to get it, but it has to be given to us. So it's not a cheap thing. It's not a cheap thing. So you said, what is it that you said exactly? Okay. Act now and samadhi later. So therefore, what is in my hands is do this tīvra bhakti. What is in my hands is this strong practice in Krishna consciousness, and then let Krishna do the rest. Another way to say is do your best and let Krishna do the rest. So work now, samadhi later, it doesn't mean that now, again, Prabhupada is saying at the beginning, devotional service in Krishna consciousness cannot be performed blindly due to emotion or mental concoction. I used to do, again, when I was doing Sankirtan a lot of the time, I would meet Hindus, Sorry for those Hindus, but it was a common thing. I was trying to sell them the Bhagavad Gita. Oh, I know Bhagavad Gita. I know Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is already in my heart. It's a sentiment. It's a sentiment. First question asks, who is your spiritual master? Oh, yeah, well, Krishna is saying Bhagavad Gita, tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. Upadekshyanti te jñānena. So how are you living the Bhagavad Gita? So we understand Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Jnanayati Ashu Vairāgyeṇa Jñānanchat Yat Ahaitukam. That by performing devotional service to the personality of Godhead Vasudeva, one immediately acquires knowledge and detachment from the world. So we do our bhakti and let that knowledge and that detachment come. And don't pretend that now I can just sit down and meditate on Krishna's pastimes and everything is just going to flow like this. We're going to be greatly disappointed, right? Because at least my experience is that the more I go on in the process of Krishna consciousness, it's like an onion. You take one layer, then another layer, then another layer, And at the same time that we are realizing how lofty, how high is this prema bhakti and how far I am from it, then what happens is that my desire to attain, to want to get that increases, and that is actually the price to get it. Did I answer? Yeah? Prabhu?
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji, for the class. Prabhu, regarding this dṛṣṭa-tattvena, seeing through the eyes of scriptures, so what happens sometimes when we try to see through scriptures, then we see problems inside and outside. So it becomes like disturbance.
It becomes?
Disturbance.
Disturbance, yeah.
So what should be the purpose of seeing through the eyes of scriptures?
Can you give me an example so I can answer your question more precisely?
We see that Prabhupada has given very clearly what should be the purpose, what is the purpose of ISKCON and why, so how we should live, how we should not live. But then we see people doing so many other things. So it creates disturbance. So in that case, what should be done?
Well, the thing is that there is only certain things that are under our control. You know, they say you have the area of concern and area of influence, right? So there are certain things that are beyond our area of influence. What other people do, some of the things that may be going on in ISKCON or maybe going in the world, you know, like the politics, you know, so many things, you know. We cannot really occupy our minds too much on that. We can do what we can do in our lives, and we can. I used to tell this to Anutama Prabhu, who is the GBC, and I will come with a similar question, you know. What do we do about these things happen, that happen? I said, his answer was always the same. It was saying, you know, you just do what you can at in the circle that you are. You have become the change and impact the people who are you in touch with. That's all you can do, and if everybody tries to do that, there will be a change, you know. So that's one thing, but you know, answering your question on a broader angle, that's yes, sometimes we may hear this, I may read this verse, I may become negative also, okay? Or I may read some instruction and I may become negative about it. So again, we have to understand that it's a gradual process, you know? It's a gradual process. And we can look at the empty glass or we can look at the full glass, like they say. Now, so, you know, I am practicing Krishna consciousness, and the mercy itself, the fact that I'm still practicing Krishna consciousness, it means I'm getting costless mercy. Costless mercy means I'm still engaged. That means Krishna is not giving up on me. And the fact is that Krishna will never give up on us. Unless we, of course, we become very offensive. But he doesn't give up. So he's just waiting, and he's just encouraging us, please get up, keep going, keep going. And as I said, we are, you know, it's, in one sense it's like a race or a marathon, you know, we're trying to go back home, back to Godhead, but, you know, we need to be patient. Bhakti, Rupa Goswami is saying, Utsaha nichayat dhairyat, dhairyat, dhira, the word dhairyat, patience, is connected, the root is actually dhira. Dhira means sober. So that being grounded, and you know, going back to this very same chapter, you know, it's very, very nice how Kapila is explaining how the soul is unaffected by matter. It's only the identification with matter. So this tīvreṇātma-samādhinā, I think is a very valuable exercise to contemplate. I'm a soul, I'm a servant. I remember many years ago, in 2010, I was teaching Bhakti Shastri in Vrindavan, and I was listening at that time I listened to a class by Sachinandan Swami, I don't remember, but it came from him anyway. He was saying that, you know, he was repeating himself, I am a servant, I am a servant, I am a servant. Throughout the day, not just like throughout the day, I'm a servant, you know. And I was for a whole month teaching there, and I remember I just kept that, you know. I was going to the temple, like, waiting for the, you know, Guru Puja. Every time there was a, you know, space, you know, I'm a servant, I'm a servant, I'm a servant. Going to pay obeisance, I'm a servant, you know, just repeating that, and wow, the consciousness changed completely, you know. It really made a big difference in how, again, how do we interact with the material nature. So we should, as I said, if we take just one lesson from this class, or something to take with us. Now, if I am the eternal servant of Krishna, how my life can change, or how my life will change this week. And every point, dṛṣṭa-tattvena. What is it? And I finish with this, okay? What is it that I know and I'm not seeing? Okay? What is it that I am attached to? And I could give about a little bit more. What is it that, what kind of tapasya I could be performing right now that is going to help me in my Krishna consciousness? How can I, Yogena, this controlling the mind and senses, means attention. How I control my mind? Where do I give my attention? How can I be more focused in my chanting? How can I be more focused even in just like a simple thing like honoring prasadam? You see Prabhupada, the way he honors prasadam, he will take a long time eating, chewing, mind fixed. So even simple things, we're not talking here about, very esoteric things, just like basic practice. How can I give my attention? And then again, I'm a soul. I'm Krishna's servant. On that basis, how I'm going to respond to this particular situation. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantha Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande. Thank you very much. Haribol.